Hello everyone, in today's tutorial we're going to learn how to create a command handler. Now basically command handlers are used to handle commands, make them more organized in separate files. We're also going to learn how to specify permissions for each command. We're going to split the commands into categories and we're going to add cooldowns for each command. To get started, like we usually do, open the folder that we created earlier. If you haven't created this, go back in the playlist and start watching from the episode 1 where we get started. Again, you click on the path and type cmd code dot to open the Visual Studio Code. And we will modify every each event when we finish working with the command handler. To get started, create a new file in the handlers folder that we created earlier in the previous episode. And let's start with handling chat messages, the messages that are received in chat in Broom instead of direct messages. We will go back to the direct messages later on. So you can call this whatever you want. I'm going to call it handle prefix, so JS. I'm going to start typing the script. You just follow me, copy what I write, and I'll explain it after I finish writing. So this is going to be the structure of reading the commands in the command folder. So I included string similarity here. I wrote that wrong. Let me edit that package name here. And we're going to open the terminal, make a new terminal, and type npm install and type string similarity. We're going to need this to check if the command that we are using it matches the command that we are using right now. If it's not, it's going to recommend us to use another command. So let's create the commands folder inside the src. So we go to src and right click, new folder. I'm going to call this commands, and inside the commands we're going to create two folders. The first one is going to be for chat, and the second one we're going to head back to the commands and we're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it direct. We will get back to the direct messages later on, but let's first start with the chat. Okay, now here we are gonna use a function that format the time into the current format, which is gonna be 1 year, for example, and 1 month, and so on. To use that function, we're gonna create a new folder inside our src, and we're gonna call this folder utils. And inside the utils, we're gonna create a new file, and we're gonna call it utils.js. Now module.exports equal, and here we're gonna use all our utils later on in the video. I am not gonna write the function because it's a bit long, so we're gonna be putting it in the first comments, so you can just copy it and use it. So we paste the function right here, and we go back to app.js. Okay, so we're gonna do bot.utils equal require, and we're gonna require the utils folder, which is inside the src, and utils and utils. This way we can access every function in the utils using bot.utils to make things a little easier for us. So here we can go back to the format time, and we can do bot.utils and use the same function, which is msToTime, which is gonna be the time left. Okay, so the code is done. Now let me summarize the code for you, but let's first do module exports equal command handler right here. There are a few things that we need to configure, including the developers and moderators. Remember when we went to the config here and we added the moderators, but we only with the username. So we're gonna change that, and we're gonna add developers. But let's make this a little bit cleaner. To do so, we are going to remove all the variables here, and we're gonna include them all in the module.exports. So module.exports equal, and here we can say settings, and inside the settings we can add the prefix, which is our prefix, and we can also add the moderators and the developers. So moderators. Now the moderators is going to be an object, and it's going to have IDs, and it's going to have user names. The usernames are going to be the same usernames that we used before, Hussein and my other account. And to get the IDs, we are going to use the web API. To use the web API, we're going to search for each ID for every user that we have in here. So this is the link that we're gonna be using to get the ID for each player, and we're gonna replace the username with the username for each moderator. So it's gonna be webapi.highrise.game/users !, and username equal, and the user that you want to extract their ID. And this is gonna be the username that we need, the user ID that we need. I'm gonna copy this user ID, and we're gonna be putting it in the IDs right here. I'm gonna do the same for the other account. So go back here and put the username, the bundle, and copy the ID that we have right here, just like that. I will also include this link in the description if you want to use it. And we're gonna follow the same steps for the developers. So just copy this, put it right here, and change this to developers. And I'm gonna keep the same names. You can just modify this however you want. You can add more developers. You can add more moderators. For example, moderators are gonna be responsible for kicking people, basically moderation commands. And the developers are gonna be the ones who can control the bot, including preloading commands, deleting commands, inserting commands, and so on. And after the settings, we're gonna include the token and the room. To do so, we're gonna do auth. It's gonna be an object. It's gonna be the token. Then we're gonna paste this token here, and here we can say room, and the room ID goes here, and we can get rid of all of this, just like that. And now if you go back to our app.js, the config is still the same config. We can do bot.developers equal config.developers, config.settings, I'm sorry. So it's gonna be bot config.settings prefix, and here we're gonna do settings again, and config.settings.developers, and same for mods, bot.moderators equal config.moderate.settings.moderators. This way we access the moderators and the developers in our code, in our commands later whenever we need them, instead of requiring the config file again. Now if we go back to handle prefix, I'm gonna explain this code real quick. First, we install the string similarity package so we can use it to identify which command we are using, and if the command that we are using does not match, it will try to find a random command, and it's going to tell the user that this command was not found. Do you mean, or did you mean to use the other command? For example, if we have two commands, one called balance and the other one's called bingo, for example. If you type bingo and the bingo command does not exist, it will tell you, do you mean balance? Because both commands are similar. So first we require the not modules, which is the fs and the path. Then we create a new map for the commands and the cooldown. We go through each folder that we have in the src in the commands for chat and direct. But direct I'll explain more about it later, but let's focus on the chat right now. And for each file in the chat, we are going to check for the folder inside the chat. For example, here we're going to have something like private, and we're going to have another folder called moderator, for example. And we can create as many folders as we want here. Those are going to be the categories, and we're going to include the commands inside the private and inside the moderator, which is a category for each command. And now we have the main function which handles the command. Again, we check if the user ID is equal to the bot ID we'd return, because we don't want to listen to the bot messages. We get the prefix from the variable that we stored earlier in the app.js, which is this one here, bot.prefix equal config.settings.prefix. And we check for the terminal messages, the same we did in the first episode. And we filter the args, and here we are getting the commands from the map that we stored earlier, because in the structure that we have, when the bot starts, it's gonna read all the commands that we have in the folders, and it's gonna store them inside the maps that we created earlier. And we find the similarity if there's no commands, or if there's no commands that matches this specific command that we are using, and if the command does not include is not included in the private or the moderators category, because basically we don't want users to be prompted by a command that they are not supposed to use. And here, if there's no similarity, we just return, nothing's gonna happen. And we access the developers by creating a new variable or constant for the developers and the moderators, because in the app.js we said that the bot.developers and bot.moderators equal to config.settings.moderators, the one we set earlier in our config.js. If we go back to the handler prefix, we're going to check for permissions now. Now permissions are going to be inside the command, and here, just to make things a little bit easier, we can remove the s from the permissions and just keep it permission, just like that. And now we check if the permission is developer and there's no developers, like the developers IDs does not include the user who's sending the message. It's going to return a message to them, can say you don't have permission to use this command. You can change the messages here, it's up to you. And we check for the moderators the same way. And here we're going to check, instead of checking for permissions every time, we can move this up here And now, if the bot checks for this category, which is private, because the private category are going to be the owner or developer related. So instead of checking permissions, just include the category private, and it's going to say that you don't have permissions to use this command. Now, to set the cooldown for each command, we check if the user is not included in the developers, because we don't want to set a cooldown for the player or the for the user who made the bot. If there's no command, we set a new cooldown for the command that we're trying to use, because we want separate commands to have separate cooldowns. And this is just basic. We we check the time when you will be able to use the command, and we delete it after a certain amount of time. And the default is 0. You can put the default here, for example, for 3 seconds to avoid spamming. And we return a message and say, please wait, the formatted time. It's the function that we created earlier in the utils, which is right here. And we return a message telling them that you can use the command. And later we basically execute the command. We pass in the bot object, the user object, the args, and the commands map, because we are going to use the commands to reload them, to insert a new command, to disable, enable them, or even make a dynamic help command. So after you finish doing this, we're gonna go to the events and the server, the client, and the chat create. We are gonna remove all of this, so we're gonna get rid of the entire thing right here. We don't even need the try and catch, but we can just get rid of this thing inside of it. And here we're gonna require the command handler that we created earlier. To do so, you can just type command handler and enter. It's gonna require it, but you can also do const and const equal require, and here find the path for the handlers, and then the handle a handler prefix, and just pass in the command handler and put it right here, and then pass all the parameters that we have, which is going to be the bot, the user, and the message, just like so. If we go to the private, right now, we can create a new file here. But before I do that, I am gonna return using Ctrl Z, and I'm gonna return all the way back, so we can copy the commands that we had here into separate files. So the command say is gonna be here. We're gonna create a new file, and we're gonna call it say.js. Now this is the way we're gonna be using to create commands for each category. So module.exports equal name is the name of the command that we have, which is say, and then the cooldown for the command. You can leave this empty if you don't want. You can not include it if you don't want it, but I'm gonna say a 3 seconds cooldown. We can add an example, and in the example we can say, for example, prefix and say, and here we can pass in the input. This will be showing when you try to execute the command and you execute it in a wrong way. And description, those are optional. You don't have to include them, but it's better to include them right now, because later on we're going to be creating a dynamic help, and we're going to be showing all the information that we have right here. So the description is going to be make the bot say something. Now the permission, we can include it, but we don't need to, because we already have the private category. To access the private category, we pass in category here, and we call it private, just like that. And now run asynchronous. We're gonna make it an asynchronous function. It's gonna be bot, user, args, and arrow function. And we can also wrap our code with a try and catch. We just say console.error, an error occurred, and we can just pass in the error here. And we can also notify the user that something went wrong. We're gonna return bot.whisper.send. We're gonna tell them that something went wrong, the command. Now here we're gonna pass all the information that we had, or the command that we created earlier in the chat create. To do that, simply copy everything inside the command here and paste it in the say command. You don't have to return, because this is the last line of code. To make things easier for us, we can do const prefix equal bot.prefix. And here, replace this with prefix, just like so. Now we don't need the say command anymore. We don't need the test command, right? We need the add command. So we can get rid of all of these. Now the add command should be for the developer, or it should be for the admin. So you can create a new category here and call it admin. But I'm gonna paste it in the private category. So we're gonna do add.js. Again, module.exports equal name for the command is going to be add. You can also go to the say and copy this command right here. Just copy this entire thing and go to the add, paste it right here and modify everything inside of it. So we can get rid of all of the things inside the command, and we're going to start changing few values here. So this is going to be add, and the example is going to be the add, and then the subcommand, and here's going to be the user that we want to add, and add a user as a moderator or a designer, for example. And the category stay private, everything's perfect. We just copy the code that we have here and we paste it inside the add command. So copy this and paste it in here. But here we have to remove this file, remove this statement because we don't need it anymore. Because we're already checking if the category is private in the command handler, we're just going to return. So just remove this line. And again, the bot.config.prefix, we don't need this anymore because we already defined the prefix as bot.prefix. So remove it and replace it with prefix. This way, and we can also, we don't have to return here. And we're going to go back to the chat create, get rid of everything. And now you can require the command handler that we had earlier. Again, if you type command handler and it doesn't show, you can require it manually. Gotta take bot, user, and message. Now to start the bot again, just go to terminal, new terminal, and node dot. Oh, there's no such fellow to commands, chat. Okay, this is because we messed up our path. So to fix it, just come here, do require, and find the path, which is going to be commands, and then there's chat. So we need to remove that, node clear, node dot, an invalid token provided. This is because I forgot to change the token since we changed the way we're handling the config. So just come back here to the app.js, remove the config.token and add config.auth.token and config.auth.room. This is because we changed the way we are handling our config. We added auth, which is an object that stores the token and the room. I will later show you how to use .env.env to store the token in a safer place so nobody has access to it. So let's go back to our terminal, clear, and node dot to start the bot again. And here you can see the bot is ready and the bot has started. So I come here, let's do add. The bot should work just fine. Please provide an input and an option. And if you say, I'm gonna say, please provide an input. Say this is me. Say this is me. Just like that. This is me. So this way, all the commands are working. Everything's perfect, and you can set up permissions if you want. You can add more permissions here. You can go to the config, add admins, for example, and you can follow the same structure. Now here, if you want to create a new command, or a new category, you just create a new category here. We can call this public, for example, and inside the public we can create a new file. We can call it test.js. And again, module.exports equal name is going to be test. We don't need the cooldown, we don't need anything, but the most important thing is the name and the category. So pass in category, and this is going to be public, and just run async bot user args. And we're going to try catch. You don't need the try and catch, but it's like I suggest you add it all the time, just so you know where the error is occurring. We can just say here command and then test and just pass in the error, and just to know what this log is about, we just pass an error. And here we say bot the message to send, and we can say this is a test command. Refresh the bot again. So Ctrl C to start the bot again. I mean to clear the terminal, and then do node dot to start the bot. We go back here and we say test. It should work just fine. Now that's done. In the next episode, we're going to learn how to insert new commands without restarting the bot, how to enable and disable commands, how to set up more permissions, and how to set up a dynamic help command. I hope you guys found this helpful. Let me know if you have any question. I will be posting the link that you need to use to extract the user ID in the description. And I'll also be posting the function that I used in the utils here, which is the msToTime, in the description as well. Or you can just join the Discord and ask for any question that you have.